Morning. Morning. Hi, everyone. How's everybody doing out there? Thank you for joining us live today. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hi, everyone. Hi. Thank you for joining. Please share this live stream with your friends and family. If you're joining us on Facebook Live, that is the number 4, United. If you're joining us on LinkedIn Live, that is Minorities for Medical Marijuana. And if you're joining us on our YouTube channel live, that is the number 4, United. Thanks again for joining us this morning. Really excited about the conversation that we're going to have today, talking about traumatic brain injury and how cannabis can be used to help those that are suffering with this particular diagnosis. And I wanted to talk about what a traumatic brain injury is, and because it has affected so many people, it affects, athletes, it affects people that might have gotten into a car accident or received some other blow to the head. And because someone that I know and care about deeply was diagnosed with a traumatic brain injury last year, this topic and this diagnosis is near and dear to me and to my guest. But first, I just want to briefly explain based on what the definition of a traumatic brain injury is. A brain dysfunction caused by an outside force, usually a violent blow to the head. Traumatic brain injury often occurs as a result of a severe sports injury or car accident. Like in the case of my mentor and sister friend, Ms. Roz McCarthy, who will be joining us today as our guest, is a traumatic brain injury survivor, as well as Dr. Hervé Damas. He is also a traumatic brain injury and concussion specialist who treats his patients using cannabis. But first, we are going to be speaking with the amazing, the beautiful, the wonderful Miss Roz McCarthy, founder of Minorities for Medical Marijuana, CEO of Black Buddha Cannabis, and My CBD Life. Welcome, Roz. Welcome.
Good morning, Nicole. Good morning, everybody. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Well, we're happy to have you, Roz. I know that the last 6 months of last year, you were going around giving your testimony to the power of plant medicine and how CBD really helped you recover from your traumatic brain injury. So could you just start us off with what happened and tell us a little bit about your story and your experience with your diagnosis?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to break it off in chunks because I want to have this interactive, and I know that we have people that are listening to us that have suffered from that are traumatic brain injury survivors. And so I want to encourage people to ask their questions or weigh in so that we can really make this engaging, because I will tell you this: prior to my car accident, I had no idea what a TBI was. I had no idea exactly how it would make you feel. I was I heard people that said, hey, I have a TBI or I'm a traumatic brain injury patient, but I had no idea. So long story short, last summer, I literally was driving, and I actually was driving to my office, and I was getting ready to turn into my office building, and someone was coming out one way. I was trying to go in this way, and the person behind me wasn't paying attention, and they rocked me. And I remember the accident, thinking to myself, what the F? And then I remember having the seatbelt on, and I remember my body going like this forward, like this. The airbags weren't deployed. The whole entire left side of my car was all jacked up. And I remember feeling like this excruciating pain from my shoulder going up my neck. But you know how it is. The adrenaline is running, is flowing. You're not thinking. You're just getting out the car. I was dealing with a lady who was like, she was like cussing me out. She's like, you little bitch, and da 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 da. You watch what you was doing, and I was just like, so I had to calm down. Where my office is located, the police response was not quick at all. So we literally had to, my whole entire tail of my car drive into the parking lot. We waited and waited and waited. So I'm saying all this to say that at the time I was fine. I felt fine. I didn't think anything. I was just like, all right, cool. I got it done. And, I went home. I rested. I took some ibuprofen because I did feel this kind of like the whole shoulder area just was inflamed. What I didn't do, and hey, I see Dr. Damas is on with us, so I'm going to bring him on in as well, if that's okay with you, Nicole.
Yes, please. Hi, welcome, Dr. Damas.
Hey, Dr. Damas.
Hey, what's up? What's up? Thank you guys for waiting. Thank you guys for waiting.
No, you're fine. No, you're fine.
Yeah.
Roz was just sharing. Roz was just sharing her story of what happened last summer with her car accident to explain how she got her diagnosis. So we just got started. Yeah. You're right on time, sir. Right on time.
All right, cool. Pleasure to meet you. Roz got her Florida winter gear on. Yeah.
It's cold.
It is cold out here.
I'm already, I got a hat on. Yes. So for all those who do not know, yes, I live in Florida, but it is cold here. It is about 30 degrees here. And this is why I'm all hatted up, and because we're not used to this weather down here. So
yeah, they don't turn their heat on in Florida. No.
Girl. I got my heat on. I turned the heat on last night.
Yeah.
Oh, y'all killing me.
Dr.
I'm sorry for
Damas,
interrupting.
I'm gonna go a little bit into my story, but I really want you to weigh in as well. And then it's just an engaging time. I was explaining how I didn't know what a TBI was, and about my accident. And so when the accident happened, the seatbelt caught me here, and I went up and back like this. So this is important for you guys to know this, because I didn't realize that type of jerky motion is, and when it happened. Sometimes you have TBI patients that are, motorcycles where they've crashed into glass on the pavement or anything of that nature. Mine wasn't like that. I didn't have any type of airbag deployment. It was just that jerky moment of being able to be rocked. And so my doctor said that the energy from that crash, not only did my shoulder and my neck area sustain it, but my brain sustained that energy. And we have no idea how much when you're sitting, and I didn't see the crash coming. So sometimes if you see the crash coming, he said that you can brace yourself and kind of prepare yourself. But I didn't see the crash coming. I wasn't looking in the rearview mirror. I was just sitting there thinking, okay, I got to wait for this lady to come out. And literally, it happened. My symptoms, and Dr. Damas, I don't know why this would happen, but the concussion-like symptoms, it took almost 2 weeks before they kicked in. But when they kicked in, I was in my office, and I was, again, doing some work. I was on a Zoom call just like this, and literally the office next to me, they were doing hammering. They were doing construction. And all I can remember is they were doing, and there was boom, 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 boom. And all of a sudden, all I could see was my screen. Like everything just got so fuzzy. And I felt like my heart started beating. And then I thought I was having a stroke. And I was like, someone called 911, and I just passed out. And so that was the start of all of my symptoms, all of the nausea, the disorientation, my head feeling the pressure like it was about to explode. Not explode. It felt like it was underneath in a scuba tank or underneath water. My ability, my eyesight, my concentration, my speech, being able to process 2 or 3 different things at one time, it was gone. Mm-hmm. And I ended up passing out about 4 times after. Like I passed out in the office, passed out again at the doctor's office, passed out again at lunch, and then that's when they put me in the hospital. And the doctor did all of these different. He did the Doppler on the neck. He did the brain EKG. He did cardiac workup just to make sure it wasn't cardio related. Mm-hmm. He did all this work, and he said, "Roz, you are suffering. You have a traumatic brain injury due to your car accident." And he says you have he talked about the concussion and whiplash and all of that combined together. So that's what happened with me. And literally I had to have Nicole Buffong graciously left her home in Las Vegas, moved in with me for 4 weeks. and took care of me. And if it
Wow.
were not for the plant, cannabis, first Dr. Damas, she took everything out of my refrigerator that was processed, everything out of my pantry, threw it all out. And so that's the baseline.
I
And
thought you were gonna say
and
first
she was
she ate all my food.
no,
She just said, she
no,
came to the crib and ate all my food up.
No,
no, she did
I
not.
no.
She did
No, the first line of defense is your
not.
diet. So the first line of defense, especially when you're dealing with a brain injury, well, any type of disease or the body at disease, it is so important to make sure that you're eating whole foods, not processed foods. Giving your body and your brain more work to do when it's trying to recover and heal doesn't make sense. So if the first thing I knew I needed to do was remove all of those processed things from her cabinet and her refrigerator and go straight to the farmer's market and buy whole foods and start preparing those whole foods for her. So that was our first line of defense. And then it was making sure that she was on a regular full spectrum CBD regimen because she wasn't taking any CBD at all, not regularly. And so and honestly, in 48 hours, and her son can attest to this, that it was a drastic difference, just in her anxiety level, but also in her recognizing that she had more control over the symptoms from the brain injury, that she had more control over controlling. And that was important. And CBD had so much to do with that because of its anti-anxiety properties and its anti-inflammatory properties that were actually helping her brain to recover. So those were the first two things that we implemented. Make sure she had fresh whole foods in her body to eat, and then of course getting her on a regimen of full spectrum CBD.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So you did not eat all her food up.
No, I
We're
did
glad.
not. No, no,
No, that's a good plan.
I don't eat like that. So I'm plant based because I use plant medicine to help heal my body. I was diagnosed with HIV in 2017, and so plants help my body heal. And so that's why she called on me. She knew how serious and how passionate I am about healing, because I'm a patient. I'm not a medical professional, but from my own experience, I know that I can share what I've learned with others to help them heal as well.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. I like
Yeah.
it. These
Dr.
stories have
Dr.
you
Thomas,
women have layers to you. The waters are deep.
it's
Yeah,
the word is
right.
deep. The word is deep. Dr.
The
Thomas, I
waters
know
are deep.
we've gotten to one and people got to know us a little bit. Let's go back a little bit and have you kind of share who who you are and your how this topic is related to you.
So I guess going back, I'm a football player, but by like love and heart, right? So, I started playing football in high school, fell in love with the sport, very violent, very violent sport. And made it all the way to the pros. Actually, had 1 year with the Bills, really bad knee injury, messed me up and ended my football career after one year in the pros. And then kind of went through the typical things that people go through at that level. It's kind of like finding an identity because so much of yourself is wrapped into this thing. Like, I'm a football player right now. I'm no longer a football player. What do I do with myself? I got into health and exercise and fitness, and then I got into medicine when my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. And it was a conversation with her about what I was doing in my life and taking advantage of some of the time I still had left on this planet to do something. This is my mom talking to me. She's near her death, and we're having those conversations, and I felt really, let's say, helpless. To watch someone. Obviously, you only have one mom. To watch someone that you care so much about go through this horrible situation and not really know what's going on. Like, people are speaking to you, going to all these doctors, and Roz and both of you guys have had to probably have they're talking to you about all this stuff. You're like, what? I need a translator. So I felt really helpless, and I was like, I'm going to become a doctor. I want to be able to take care of, realistically, I remember saying the next time somebody in my life is sick, I want to be able to take care of them. I want to be able to be like, hey, I got you covered. So years later, I'm in med school now, Because I was, this is later in life. I think I started med school at like 37. I don't know how old I was. Yeah, I was mad old at the time. I was the mad old medical student, right? And I started getting these headaches. I started getting these post-concussive, symptoms that I did not know. And this is many years later, right? So I had stopped playing football in 1996, so this is 2009. Right. So, Ra, what you're saying, Ra, is in terms of the delayed manifestation of the injuries, that there can be, a big, big time difference between when the insult happened and when you see the after effects based on a lot of things, your personal physiology, the nature of the insult to your body, the care you received afterwards, like all these things, variables play. And then, that's why you get this kind of like, oh man, nothing happened to me. And then like a year later, you're like, something's something's odd, but that was so long ago, couldn't be that. So, 2009, I think I started suffering from headaches, insomnia, and anxiety. And the headaches were really bad. The headaches were really bad. Felt like somebody was trying to rip my head open, like fingers in my scalp and like rip it open, right? So I was self-medicating with a bunch of ibuprofen and Tylenol, acetaminophen, and stacking those. I had a little bit of medical knowledge. I was just smart enough to be really dumb and dangerous, right? Just a little bit, just enough to think that I know what I'm doing when I don't know what I'm doing, right? So I'm taking these Tylenols and Advils, and then I'm taking sleeping pills to go to sleep. I can't go to sleep, but the sleeping pills had me drowsy all day. Switched, was using Benadryl to go to sleep at night, and again that made me drowsy. And I did not know at the time, because that movie with the concussion, the NFL stuff, the NFL was denying any kind of complicity in that stuff. So I didn't know why like things were unraveling for me. Um, so I started going to a bunch of doctors. I had access to all these physicians. I was in medical school and I had good relationships with, physicians that were training me. And I'm like, this is what's going on with me. I don't know what's up, right? But oh my God. And I wound up in kind of like the hamster wheel, the US medical system hamster wheel. As someone who's training to be part of it, I wound up going to a bunch of different specialists, getting a lot of tests done with a lot of prescriptions. You know, I wound up having another surgery because along the route, I figured out, I was spending so much time studying, that I let myself go. I wasn't working out and exercising, and everything started going down for me. And I figured out like if I exercise regularly, things are much better for me, right? I didn't know at that time, like the relationship with your endocannabinoid system and those type of things. I just knew that if I exercise, I feel good, right? So I was exercising so much I hurt myself. And then I had to have a surgery. And that's when like everything, there was a confluence of like it all went bad after that last surgery. They gave me Percocets, they gave me oxycodone, and to this day, I consider myself lucky that I didn't tolerate them well. So the Percocets gave me an out of body feeling, and the oxycodones, I felt like I was dying. Like my life force was slowly being drained from me, and I couldn't take them. So post surgical, I just had to suck it up and use the Tylenol because I couldn't take the pain meds. I didn't know any other options whatsoever, and I still can't sleep, and I still got headaches, and I still got anxiety, and I got all these pressures. I'm sleeping maybe 3 or 4 hours a day, and I'm in all this pain. And someone said you should try some weed, and I was like, "That's the dumbest idea I've ever heard." I'm literally going to all the best doctors. I was in Chicago, so I had access. I was in a large city. I had access to everything. I was like, that is the dumbest weed. What are you talking about? What are you doing? I'm literally like going to the big institutions and like I'm talking to the best of the best. Weed. And I was like so adamant against it. Because I had been
And, and
go
listen,
ahead.
if I weren't in for MM, I would feel the same way. If I hadn't started in for MM, I would be like, me taking weed? Are you crazy? So I just want to
Yeah,
chime in.
yeah. I was
Crazy.
like, this is the dumbest idea. What do you? And it just got worse and worse. And I went to more and more doctors. I wound up with like a prescription for what I have, Xanax. So they gave me a prescription for Xanax, which is a benzodiazepine anti-anxiety. They gave me that for sleep and anxiety, which is bad. I didn't tolerate that well. They gave me Seroquel, uh, just a bunch of like prescription. None of that stuff, like all of it, was either made me feel really sick or the side of I just couldn't do it. So eventually, things got so bad that I basically gave up, and I was like, what do I have to lose? Like, I've done everything that I thought I could do for myself. I've spoken to everybody that I could. I've seen everybody, I've had all the things, and I'm still in the same situation. Why not? It was like, yeah, I guess why not? And then it worked. That's the story.
It
It
worked.
literally
It
worked.
works.
What
It
did
worked. And
what did you use? What did you use,
so
Dr. Galmis? What was your
so
first
this is
introduction
funny.
to
Yeah.
cannabis?
Yeah, so this is funny, like I'm not gonna act like I was super pious. I had smoked a little weed when I was a kid, kind of like recreational, even in college, between like the end of season and off season. So you had like a little period that you had your free time, you wouldn't get drug tested. You play around and stuff like that. But I was always so kind of like I know I wanted to make it to go to the NFL. Like that was my thing. So I didn't want any problems like, oh, this dude's got a failed drug test or whatever. So I was like, I ain't, this is my goal. I am not messing around with it. So I didn't know much about weed. So I remember going to the hospital one. This is fun. I'm laughing thinking about it. Going to the hospital. There was lots of people in med school that smoke weed, which again, I was like, yo, you dudes are smoking weed? How's that working out? Right. And they're like, oh man, it helps me relax. I remember these conversations with people way back. Like if it wasn't for the weed, this thing would drive me crazy. And so, I went to see one of these dudes and I was like, hey, I'd like to get some stuff. I don't even know what to call it. He was like, what stuff? I was like, you know, you know what stuff. So no, what stuff are you talking about? I was like, marijuana. He was like, you want weed? You want weed? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, you? I was like, he was like, you're really straight. I was like, yeah, man, I need some weed. So he puts me in touch with his connect, his plug, right? Dude's got like a shady third story walk up in some shady part of Chicago, right? I pull up to the spot and all I remember like my chest pumping like I'm gonna get arrested. This is it right here. This is gonna end my life. I'm gonna go up
That's
there.
it.
They're gonna catch me with like $20 worth of weed. It's gonna be on the news. Former football player, arrested. I was like, that's it. My career's over. What I'm gonna say? Oh no, 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 no! I just wanted for like my health reasons. Like, get in the car. Pushing my head. Get in there. Get in the back of the car. So I was mad scared. Real talk, I was scared, like, because they've been locking us up in droves for this stuff, right? So
For
I
decades.
get the weed, yeah, right? And I get the weed, so I don't even remember what it was, to tell you the truth, like what strain. I didn't even know there were strains at the time. Honestly, I didn't know anything about that.
Whoever was selling it to you didn't know the cultivar either.
Yeah,
They just
right,
go by.
exactly.
Nobody's getting anything tested back then in
Nah, right. So
Chicago.
he was just
No.
like, yeah, I'm
Right.
sure the line was probably like, oh, I got this from my Connect in Cali. It's the best stuff. Everybody got a Connect in Cali. It's the
Of
best stuff,
course.
right?
Yes. Yes.
Right. So
Right.
I smoked. It was my girlfriend at the time. I didn't even know how to roll. She rolled it up for me. I smoked. I wound up choking on most of it because I wasn't a smoker, right? So I'm smoking this stuff, like coughing. I might have coughed out more than I actually inhaled. But I'll tell you what, within an hour, I was asleep. I slept 14 hours that first night. And I hadn't slept
Best
like,
sleep. Best
what?
sleep
I
of your
slept
life.
like, yo, I slept
Your
like
life.
Who was the
Yeah.
dude that slept? Was it Rip Van Winkle? Who's the old?
Yes.
What was the
Yeah.
old character?
Like a
I slept like
baby.
that.
Like a
I
baby.
slept. Yep. And then the next night, I was like, "What?" The next night, I slept for like 10 to 12 hours, right? And that
Yes.
was like, I was like, this is, I've never slept like this. And I felt like the anxiety was gone. You know, the sleep, the lack of sleep contributes. So it's kind of like it's a
Absolutely.
circular thing, right? So once you get started, the lack of sleep causes anxiety, right? The
Right.
anxiety contributes to a lack of sleep, right?
Right.
And then there's
And then
the
contributing
headaches.
to the headaches. Right. Of
Yeah.
course.
So
Yeah.
you got this thing. And I remember saying, I still didn't believe it. After 2 days, I still did not believe it. So I was like, I ain't going to smoke this stuff. It was a Saturday night. I was like, I ain't going to smoke just to see. I didn't get any sleep that Saturday night. I was up to 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And the Sunday before I had to go back to the hospital Monday, I was like, I'm going to smoke tonight because, we back on work. We got to go back on Monday. I need to get that sleep. Went to sleep. And I remember that Monday coming back from the hospital, I had like a great day. Like everything was like, this is what life is supposed to be like, right? And I was like, I got to find out what this is about. I started Googling and YouTubing. I learned since I didn't like to smoke, I wasn't a smoker. So even to this day, I can't really smoke. I choke and cough. So I do like edibles and tinctures and oils and
Gummies.
things like that.
Gummies.
Right? I'm just
Yeah.
not a big, gummies. I'm not a big smoker, but I learned how to make my own tea. So I was like, yeah, I have my tea in my fridge. So I would come back from the hospital, do my studying, and then like an hour before bed, drink some of my tea. I had my little recipe like down, it was in the fridge. Like, don't touch that. That's his specialty. And then I was like, I have to do this. And then there was something inside of me that was calling me that was like, if someone like me, like, and I'm not tooting my own horn, but I've gone through a lot of schooling. Like, I had a bunch of degrees. At that point, I was finishing med school. I was matching. I was doing really well. I was matching into, one of the most difficult specialties. I went to gen surge and radiology. I was like, I'm a pretty smart person. I never like had academic issues. And so the idea that I can go through all this traditional education and do well at it and have such a big gap of knowledge in this one particular thing bothered me because it was like, if I don't know about it and I've been in these books, so I've been in these books hard, right? And if I don't know about it, then can you imagine all the other people out there going through
Doctors,
things?
medical
Yeah,
professionals that don't know,
yeah, right. Like I was
how to
training to
talk
be
to
that.
their patients about it. Did you,
Yep.
I have a
So
question. Did you ever ask because you were in school still at the time, right?
yeah,
Or
I was still
you
in
were
med
going
school.
through, right. So did you
Yeah.
ever ask your professors, like, did you ever ask
No,
them, like, has anybody heard of the endocannabinoid system? Why are we not learning about the
no.
endocannabinoid system?
No, I had never heard of it. I did not know of it. So none of them. As a matter of fact, I doubt any of them, like any of the physicians would have even recommended it. Because the way we were being trained to speak about cannabis, marijuana, was that it was bad and was usually, a substance of abuse. And so, the entire training when it came to cannabis was kind of like, hey, you
It's
know, kids smoke weed, they become apathetic. You get stoner kids. Just tell them no. That was like always the thing, right? Or how do you treat somebody who comes in that looks like they're high? That was it. It was like, if this person comes in and they look like they're high, what do you do as a physician? Or if you see a kid, what do you do? And the answers were really like, if the person looks like they're high, just let them sit. It'll wear off. And if you see a kid come into office that's sick, that's high, that you think is high, get them some counseling because they've got a drug abuse problem. That was it. So the idea of me talking to one of my superiors, one of my attending physicians, and saying like, "Hey, man, what's up with this weed?" Nah, that
right.
I already knew that was and it would have been a situation where if I did say, I'm smoking weed or something, that could turn into something punitive. I think a
Of
lot of
course.
people are still in that
Of course.
situation, so you don't even feel comfortable being like, "Hey, man, I'm thinking
Out of
about doing
fear.
this weed thing."
Of course.
Yeah,
Yes.
And I would say I felt that too, right? Because what I can't tell somebody I'm thinking about smoking weed or using weed, and then I'm gonna go into the hospital and do procedures, right? Because now they're thinking like, oh, this
Right.
dude's gonna come here, right? Which is a
Right.
Right.
crazy,
But he's
Intoxicated.
high.
Right.
yeah, right? Because
Right.
Yeah.
I
Right.
know. I know we had a drunk ass anesthesiologist, and that dude had a coffee container thing. There was no coffee. I can tell you that
Tell the
thing never
truth.
smelled
Shame the
like
devil.
right,
That's right.
right. I'm no for real. Like you, and then there were people that were always like, you'd have some people that were stealing the patient's meds. So I knew like there was a lot of stuff going on in there. Like, it wasn't prevalent, but
Yeah.
there were people, everybody wasn't like straight laced sober. People were drinking and
Yeah.
people were stealing meds,
So how did
so,
you?
but
How did you?
weed,
Yeah,
So
weed was a
let me ask you
non-starter. Go ahead,
so
Ross.
Dr. Damas, for myself, the regimen that Nicole put me on, she had me do CBD every 4 hours, 4 to 6 hours. Like
mm,
she was nonstop. Like I would try to sleep and she'd be like, okay, it's time to take it. Even, which was good because it kept it in my system. But then when I had those feelings of where the pressure in my brain was so bad where I couldn't even and the nausea that was associated. And she would have me on, we were utilizing Da Vinci, which is a the vaporizer that utilizes dry flower. What is
mm.
it I mean, is the active ingredient the THC in the plant from a full spectrum? Is that what helps to relieve that pressure and those symptoms that are related to the concussion and to the TBI? Can you talk more from a
Good, yeah,
science
good
base? Because
stuff, right?
almost instant. Like I would go
Mm-hmm.
outside and to get some vitamin D, and then I would just vape a little bit, and that pressure was just all of a sudden it just felt like it was like, okay, that release was gone. I mean that pressure was gone. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned you're about to make me geek out on the science right now. So hold on to your seats. So hold on
Let's
tight.
go.
All
Let's
right.
go.
I'm about.
Let's go. Let's go. I love science. So let's
Okay. All
go.
right. So, you may know that I did a study 2 years ago on CBD and quality of life in retired professional athletes. So we had a number of football players. It was a pilot study, 2 years, 24 participants, ex-NFL guys, some hockey guys, a couple of women's basketball players, right? And so we were trying to figure out, like, does this really, I feel like it does, right? Like, but like, let's get some real hard science. So it took us some time to get that done because of all the regulations. But one of the things that, background, we had Dr. Mashulam consult for us, which is always good to kind of like learn, some of these things and start reading some of his research and his stuff out there. So we had some really good results from our study from guys who had expressed neurological deficits or as a result of playing their violent sports, whether it's hockey or football. So we had really simple. But Shulam had been doing this stuff with the Israeli army from years before, so that's why we consulted him. And those guys, because they're always in a military conflict areas, right? There's a lot of this stuff that goes on, IEDs, roadside bombs and things, and they get these really strong concussive forces, which goes back to you, Roz. For example, in your accident, there's a number of ways that the injury can occur, right? You can have the direct blow, or you can have a blow to yourself, which is your brain being rattled within your head as a result of some other thing, right? So let's
Right.
say if I'm a boxer and I get knocked out, that's from the direct concussive force of that, right? Boom, right?
Right.
But if I take, let's say, a baby and shake the baby, right? I didn't hit the baby in the head, but the change in velocity is causing the brain to smack itself around inside the skull.
Wow.
The problem with those is that those tend to be worse, right? So when you look at, for example, what they did with the Israeli army, if you were not directly, like if a bomb blew up and you were closer to it, right, you wouldn't be as bad off as say you were 10 feet away from it and the bomb blew and then you hit the concussive wave of that, right? So the force of the wave would then blow you away, and here this stuff comes, right? as opposed to if you were right there, you would absorb a lot of it and it would cause a lot of tissue damage, but you wouldn't get that, right? So that's what happens to a lot of people in car accidents. And because of that injury, we call it a traumatic brain injury, because that injury happened as a result of trauma, right? Like, it didn't happen because you got sick, you got infected, something did something to you. Now, these TBIs cause damage in different parts of the brain based upon the nature of it, right? It could be multiple parts, it could be one part, right? And that damage can, like we said, manifest itself early, or it can manifest itself late. One of the things, and going back to what Nicole was saying about the endocannabinoid system, is we know that the largest producers, the part in our body that produces the most cannabinoids, endogenous cannabinoids, is our brain, because cannabinoids are produced at the end of nerve terminals. So at the largest concentration of nerves is in our brain. So that's like the powerhouse of the endocannabinoid system. We do have it, it's all throughout our body, but that's where the big thing, and it makes sense because that's your regulatory place, right? And so if there's damage to your central processing system unit, right, which regulates the production of all these things, including your neurotransmitters, hormones and cannabinoids, you're going to become dysregulated, right? Because the thing that decides you should produce this much is now damaged. It also cannot self-diagnose, so the CPU, if it's damaged, it can't diagnose its own self, right? So if someone's got damage, let's say, for example, you're knocked out. You don't know you were knocked out. You wake up and say, what happened?
Right.
What happened? I didn't know I was knocked out. Of course, because the thing that would tell you were knocked out, that kind of tells your
It's
body what's going on
short-circuiting.
with it. It's gone, right? So now you've got
Right.
this injury. You have no idea. You have no idea what's going on. Some people with TBI start to notice certain things, though. They start to notice maybe memory lapse, maybe confusion, and sensitivity. So, Roz, what you experience is not unique. That there are certain stimuli that trigger a response. For you, it was the noise, right? That, like, listen to your story, that noise triggers. I mean, that means that input, that sensory input, overwhelmed you, which normally wouldn't overwhelm you. But because you had this injury, which you were not really aware of, when that started to happen, it became overwhelming for you. Some people, it's lights. Some people, smells.
It was noise. It was smells. It was looking like I couldn't look at my phone. Like I couldn't even have a phone next to me. It was everything. And then my speech was impaired. My thoughts were, it's just, and I just never know. I didn't know that you could, like, I rock my brain without even rocking my brain. Like the energy that was absorbed was that, and it was, I guess it was large enough or big enough where it just, the damage was there. And even to this day, and mind you, Dr. Damas, I was just diagnosed. I just got over COVID because I got COVID right after Christmas. So all of the symptoms from the injury, the neck, this, heart palpitations, all that stuff, all came back after COVID as well. And the doctor said that COVID is an inflammatory disease and it'll re-trigger that stuff. It's the most scary, because you lay there in bed and your story is so, I didn't know that your mom passed away from breast cancer. My mom did too. So she passed away at home, where we watched her when she passed away. So I can understand, I can empathize and sympathize being there when you know the person that you're the closest with. And all I could think about during those dark hours in bed, I was just like, Lord, maybe this is my time, because I never felt so bad in my life. And it felt like complete darkness. And literally the changing of, for sure, what I was eating, but the ingesting and taking in cannabis, that was the time where I had relief. And then when I started, and we'll talk about the mantras, and, Nicole will tell you that I fought her some. So she'll be like, we're doing this mantra. You're going to talk to your brain right now. But
it's so important. No, it's so important. And yes, she was ready to fight me. Yes. Even though she couldn't, she was trying.
She
yes.
could, right? The
Yes,
only
she
laying of
so
hands would be like in a biblical sense, right? She's talking mess. The only thing she would have been able to
So
do
bad.
is bless
right,
me.
right. And what I had to do, Dr. Damas, was a lot of her anxiety around this injury was she was terrified of falling. She was terrified of blacking out again
Mhm,
because it happened so many times back to back. And so that anxiety inside of her, it really was locking her up. Like her
mhm,
entire body was so stiff and tight because of that fear and that anxiety. And so by
mhm,
dosing with the CBD, because of its anti-anxiety properties, it was helping her to relieve some of that anxiety, of recognizing that she could move around, and then the mantras came in honestly because she had to talk to her brain. She had to tell her brain, I am healing, I am strong, I can get through this. Because saying it out, those words are powerful, folks.
yeah,
Affirmations are a powerful part of your healing process. I go to bed every night and I say I am healed. I wake up every morning, I say I am healed. It's just part of what you have to implement into your own mind. It works into your psyche, and that has everything to do with how fast you heal. And I'm a testimony to that.
yeah,
And I watched Roz be a testimony to that. That just
yeah.
saying those
That's
words
good though.
helped her to recover that much faster. And
Yeah,
so
man. It's
I recognize how powerful those just saying those words are.
yeah. And I like, and this is funny that you say that, right? Because I look at things in a different kind of way because of my background in science and things like that, right? So I'm always analyzing. So you see, I use the example of like your brain is a CPU kind of stuff, right? Because that's how it makes sense to me. And like your words of
Yeah.
realistic, right? So, like for example, for me, I pray, right? But for me, those prayers are what kind of things am I going to prioritize in my life today, right? Like, what programs or algorithms do I want to contribute or allocate my resources to running? My if I'm a little computer right here, right? What programs are we running
Yeah.
today that are going to use up most of our resources, right? So we're going to start the day and we're going to prioritize A, B, C, and this is how it's going to run, right? And I'm telling myself this is what I want you to do today. This is how I want you to move today. And I always feel that it helps me out in kind of laying out the pathway, right? So for some people, it's like, hey, I pray and like it's going to happen, kind of thing, whatever it is. But that kind of speaking to yourself and how you process things is very important because with
Yeah.
that damage, it's like defragging your hard drive, right? You gotta like sometimes your hard drive gets all jacked up and you're like it's running slow, you're running out of memory, and it's like you need to clear out some space in this, or you might have to call in technical support to come in and take a look at it and be like, hey, listen, you've got some things running in here that we got to delete these things. This is no good. They're using up resources. They're actually, creating problems. I mean, that's the way I look at it, right? Like it makes sense to me that way. And then going back to the
Right.
CBD thing, because there's so much we could talk about. Like even my mom back then, I could tell you, my first. This is crazy. Like my first like medical procedure, I wasn't even thinking about going to med school. I had to give my mother an enema. She was on all these opioids for pain from her chemotherapy and radiation treatment, right? So she was on really strong opioids. Every time I come see her, she's sitting on the couch drooling and shaking and she's like a zombie. And I'm looking at my mother like, what is going on here? And she's like, I hate these pills that they give me, but I'm in so much pain. And she's like, I can't get off the couch. I can't do anything, right? So you're watching this person near the end of their lives, and they're not even a person anymore. They're just like a zombie.
Right,
I
right.
remember giving my mother an enema because she couldn't use the bathroom, which is a side effect of using opioids, and thinking to myself, what am I like? I've never thought I'd be like, what am I doing here? Like, what's going on here? This is weird. If I had known back then, I would have not, because she didn't like it. If that was an option, she didn't like those. I remember her saying, like, I do not like these things, but there's nothing else. And I'm in so much pain, right? So, you know, So that's something that's really important and close to me. We have a bunch of breast cancer patients. I try to do things with the, American Cancer Society and Susan D. Komen. I do a lot of that stuff because it's personal to me. And even then, the ACS, American Cancer Society, they're really kind of like, we can't officially do cannabis stuff, right? So it's even
Yeah.
that's like, I have to break down
Oh yeah.
doors and beat
Oh,
them
oh, oh
over
yeah.
the head for that.
Well,
Yeah.
when I learned that chemotherapy treatments can run anywhere from $10,000 to $25,000, yeah, that's money.
Extreme.
That's money for the pharmaceutical
Yeah.
per treatment, right? Money for the pharmaceutical
Yeah.
companies, money for those hospitals, and it costs them much less to prescribe a gram of cannabis
Mm-hmm.
to those patients, and God forbid a cannabis actually stops the cancer from duplicating.
Mm-hmm.
God forbid that. But that's what
Yeah.
it's been proven to do. One of the first clients that I helped in Georgia, and this was just another testimony to the power of the plant. A woman was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and she was in stage 4, and they when she went into the hospital, her husband had come to me and asked me for RSO, that was helping her manage her pain at home. So when she finally went to to the hospital in her last days, they were giving her opioids, heavy narcotics, and she, same thing, she would wake up in pain, they would give her the narcotics, she would go back to sleep in pain because she just didn't have any quality of life. She couldn't eat, she couldn't talk. And so her husband and her daughter decided to bring the RSO from home and give that to her. And in her last days, instead of being on the heavy narcotics, she was able to eat a meal with her family. She
Mm-hmm.
was able to have a conversation with her family because she wasn't in pain, but she also was lucid. She was aware and
Yeah.
awake and conscious. And that's
Yeah.
just another testimony to the power of the plant and
Yeah.
what it can actually do and how it works
Mm-hmm.
better than in some cases than these
Yeah.
pharmaceuticals.
I can tell you guys stories of patients. I've been in the hospital with my like their wives have called me and like, you got to come over here. Like, that's another topic. But getting back to the CBD and the geeky, there, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah. Please
I
tell us
want to give
about
you
your
guys this
business.
information.
Tell us about your
So
business as
so
well.
before that, I want to
Yeah.
explain to you guys why the CBD was helping Roz.
Oh,
All right.
yes.
So
Hmm.
so she's got this injury and why it helps people in general with these brain injuries, whether it's from traumatic singular event or an accumulation of events, which is like my thing as a football player with the concussions. I didn't even know I had concussions, right? It was just like I'm seeing double, my ears are ringing, I'm nauseous, but it's like, can you play? Yeah, so get back out there, right? Can you run, right? But it's true. Like you would be like, oh man, I don't know what's going on out here. My head is ringing. I got like, can you play? Yes. Good. All right, good. You're back out there. So what happens when you have an adjustment, an unnatural adjustment to the production of anything in your body? Let's just anything, right? Let's mention the pancreas, right? Which is responsible for reducing the enzymes that break down sugars, right? So if you got a problem with your pancreas, you're gonna have a problem with sugars, diabetes. Boom. So that's an example of that, right? So your brain produces all these things. And if you have an injury with it, you're going to have problems with a lot of things. What we know, like I said, is that the cannabinoids are produced at the nerve terminals. And when they're produced, so say this is terminal 1 and this is terminal 2, and they like give signals to each other, there's a space in between that. So when this guy produces the cannabinoids, it goes into that space. And those cannabinoids stay around there for a while before they get reabsorbed. And there's chemicals that our body produces to reabsorb, to break those down. One of them is called fatty acid amyl hydroxylate, which is FAAH. And what that does is break down the cannabinoids that are chilling around in those neuronal, the presynaptic, postsynaptic spaces, and recycles them. When you consume CBD, it decreases the activity of that enzyme. So your endogenous cannabinoids get to stay around longer and do the things that they're supposed to do. Now, what do endogenous cannabinoids do? They do a number of things, right? So they're responsible for activating other receptors like GABA, which is your inhibitory, right? So GABA receptors um, chill you out. Benzodiazepines work on GABA receptors. alcohol works on GABA receptors, right? So they bring everything down, right? So your endogenous cannabinoids are activators on those receptors, but also the CBD itself is an activator on those receptors. What are the things cannabinoids do, right? They're partly responsible for a release of serotonin. Happy, right? Makes you feel happy, right? So that's how it works in depression. What else does it do, right? Well, it actually allows for better electrical transmission, right? So that's why people who have spasticity problems, Parkinson's, see how they're shaking? That is a result of poor conductivity, right? Seizures, these global things, right? Poor conductivity. And so these cannabinoids actually allow that to take place in a smoother manner. So someone post-injury, because you can have seizure activity as a result of a brain injury, right? People start having seizures. So post-injury, you can have a situation, which is probably what was happening in the Roz, which happens to a lot of people, where your endogenous production of cannabinoids is compromised. Now, what are you going to do about that, right? Supplementing with phytocannabinoids can A, replace some of the work that your endogenous cannabinoids were doing, and B, increase the effectivity of your endogenous cannabinoids, thereby helping you overcome some of the deficits that you are feeling. That's why people start feeling better. In our study, our guys at 50 to 75 milligrams, we had a great thing. So it wasn't, we had this helmet. These really smart guys from University of Colorado Boulder were doing a concussion study for the college athletes. They have this little helmet, and it's like an EEG. It looks like something like a sci-fi movie. You connect it to a computer, and the person can do all these tasks that measure how well the brain is communicating within itself and how well the person is doing on these tasks, like memorization, reaction times, and those type of things, right? And we were able to compare what they were saying. How do you feel? Oh, I slept better. My mood is better. I'm right, and compare what they're saying to what their performance was. And what we actually found was that the guys with really bad neurological problems, right? And we didn't stratify by body weight. 50 to 75 milligrams a day, they were like golden. They were like, yeah, man, I'm doing better. And their test results were better. Meshulam was giving the Israeli army guys 800 milligrams outside. Like if you had, yeah, but he was doing it on the field. So it was like if something happened, they would take you and then it like immediately give you this large dose of CBD and cannabinoids, because we know after brain injury, you get this big release of cannabinoids. And it's theorized that you release those to protect yourself because they're very potent anti-inflammatories, right?
Wow.
And that's another
Right.
measure of it, because after the injury, you have this inflammatory response. So he was giving them large amounts because of that. And those dudes were doing really well, right? But we obviously couldn't give 800 milligrams. It's not in the field. It's not immediately after the injury, but that's one of the theories behind it. And that's how it works,
And
basically in a
what
nutshell.
and what form was he giving them?
Oh, good
The
stuff. Yeah,
capsules, sublingual? Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So we did it all. One of the questions too was like which way does it work best, right? Like, sublingual. We had some
Right,
nano stuff, some liposomal stuff. We
right.
had some, and what we found, and we even had a nasal spray, which is so I was like nasal spray. I don't know about y'all, but I ain't squirting all this stuff. We actually had people like threaten to drop out of the study, like I can't spray all this stuff. So like nobody's gonna take a whole bunch of. It's a great idea, but ain't nobody gonna take all this, squirt all this stuff, because you had to dilute it and it was just so much.
Right.
So there are things people can't tolerate well. It's just, but what we found was the sublingual tinctures and the liposomal tinctures had the best results. People
Mm-hmm.
were saying that. The capsules were after that. The capsules did well, but some of the other stuff, like I said, the nasal spray wasn't good. The aerosol wasn't great. There were certain things that it was just like, for whatever reason, delivery method, inconvenience, a bunch of stuff. And that's something that you got to pay attention to, right? So if you're giving somebody an option for a treatment, but it's something that they can't tolerate, then it ain't an option. You ain't
Right,
really give them an option, right?
Right.
Because
right,
they ain't going to do it. They're not
Doesn't
if it's
work.
really difficult.
right.
Yeah,
And
it ain't going to
and
work
then
because
with
they ain't going to do it.
with digestibles, they take a little bit longer to work, right?
Yeah,
So if we're talking
of
about
course.
using medicine in the field, like as soon as you get hit, taking a digestible
Right.
means that it's not going to get into your bloodstream until 30 minutes, an hour later. But by
Right.
consuming a sublingual, the rate of it getting into your bloodstream
Yeah,
increases
it's much faster.
exponentially. Yes, right. So that's important as well, folks who are out there listening. When you are looking for treatment options, there's so many different ways of consuming cannabis, of consuming products that have cannabis in them. And so just keep that in mind as you are looking for different treatment options. I never recommend gummies just because most of them are filled with sugar, and sugar has the toxic effects and the more inflammatory effects. So usually, unless you're making your own edibles, unless you're actually creating them at home yourself and you know exactly what's going in them, usually a tincture is the safer way to try to get the medicine without all of the other junk.
I'm a big fan of tinctures. Like, again, I don't smoke well. So,
Right.
you even want to be around me, like, here, doc, hit this. I'll be like, okay. All right.
But
You
tell
have
us
to
a
get,
little bit about your business, though, Dr. Damas. Tell us about
thank,
the business that you created around CBD there in Florida.
yeah, good stuff. So, even that's a crazy story. I was working at Mount Sinai Hospital here in Miami Beach, radiology. I was in my radiology residency, and I knew, like I told you from before, I was like, I got to do this. Like, so in 2016, when the law passed, like I was working to lobby people on my end, but I hadn't even met Roz and them then. Like I was just doing my own thing. Honestly, like I think we were all were, right? Like, hey, I'm called to do this and I'm doing my own thing, right? Going around lobbying, checking things out, sending emails, posts on, social media, kind of like, hey, help us pass this amendment to blah, 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 blah. And then when it passed and they started putting in the regulations, which I didn't know, like she was working it on the back, which is funny, right? To meet people in the background, we're doing this stuff, right? I was like, I got to do this. I'm going to open up my practice. And I did. And the hospital they did not like that. They called me into the principal's office. They're like, listen, we heard you've been going around town talking about weed. Like, this has got to stop right now, right? And you're not, as an employee of Mount Sinai, it ain't happening. So we went through a lot of stuff, actually, lawyers and this and that. And then honestly, I was fighting them a little bit, like, hey, this is what I want to do. And then they gave me an ultimatum, hey, if you don't do this, we're going to fire you. Like, if you don't cease and desist, I got to cease and desist. Those mofos gave me a cease and desist, like, cut the crap, homeboy. Right? And they were like, and if you get fired as a physician, that's on your record. You got fired for cause, right? And you don't want that following you around. Right. So they gave me that. They were like, you either going to go back to work for us, right, and cut this, or you're going to have to leave. And honestly, I'm not kidding you. I was in the office with my program director, chair of the department. And he's like, so what are you going to do? You gonna start over at this age? Swear to God, that's what he said to me. What are you gonna do? Like, we got you. You gonna get your butt, you gonna get in line and cut this weed stuff out, right? Because you causing way too much trouble. He's like, what are you gonna do? You talking all this stuff. You gonna start over at this age? And I remember saying to him, you know what? If I'm a bet on anybody, I'm a bet on myself. Sayonara, homeboy. Like, right? But it wasn't. I'm not gonna act like a tough guy. It was so easy. Like you're giving up an income, So, and when I started, I relied on my network of football players. I play ball. I'm part of the South Florida chapter of retired players, and I went to a meeting and I was like, fellas, I got an option for you if you're going through the stuff that I was going through, right? Like, I can help you if you haven't had anything. And from there, it took off. So I would say, like, my brothers, my former players, really, really helped me. Like within the network, dudes were calling each other. I have patients out in Tampa, Orlando. I'd be getting phone calls like, "Hey, man." It was at first, it was like, "Hey, man, is this the doctor?" yeah, I got your number from. I was like, it's okay, it's legal. Like, I was like, like people would always like, hey, it's okay. So, I've been able to build this really good practice, with these relationships, these close relationships with, these people from this specific group that I'm close to, right? Which again kind of fulfills like the thing that I wanted to do, people that I care about. I have old teammates from the 95 Bills, 96 Bills that are my patients that like their wives brought them in after surgery and like, yo, he was on some stuff and it made him like crazy and he was like crying and I was like able to get them off that stuff. And then things started going from there. And during that process, I started learning about CBD because I didn't really know much about CBD because my introduction to it was buying weed for in Chicago med school, right? So I've
Right.
been in that situation. And in the hospitals, they drug test too, right? So I had been like, I would go through periods of time where I'd be like, I got to be careful because you can get a random drug test. So it was hard to get stable, so my insomnia would go up and down, my anxiety would go up and down because I gotta use this weed to help me with this stuff. But if I do it, I'm at risk of getting into trouble. Um, and so when I first started finding out about this other molecule in the plant, I was like, what is this? What do you guys know? What is going on? It's another level. Yeah, it's another level. And
Right.
then at that moment, I was like, this solves a lot of the problems that a lot of people have, right?
Right.
We started learning
Right.
about full spectrum products, broad spectrum products, isolates, and all this stuff. And I
Right.
was like, oh, okay, all right, now I see my lane that I fit in. Like, this is my lane right here. That's why we started doing the CBD study and all this stuff. Right? It was like, for me, this is it. That's why I said I like the tinctures. That was my introduction to CBD was tinctures. And I was like, this is perfect. I don't got to smoke it. Let's go. Let's go. Right.
God
And
bless you,
so,
Dr. Damas. Oh, God
yeah.
bless you.
So that's it. Just kind of like I guess life has been pushing me in different ways. I didn't know at the time, but like saying like, "Hey, this door opens, that door closes. Go here." Like that door closes,
Yeah.
go here. I met Roz at like a function. I don't even know. It was like a cannabis
Conference.
function, right?
It was
Like your
probably
was a
cannabis
conference.
conference down there, and the shout out to Eric Range. Eric Range has already given you shout out and love. I know you guys are super close, Dr. Damas.
Yeah.
Dr. Damas is like, let me just tell you guys, he's not your normal doctor. He comes to our expungement clinics. He's about his patients. He's about education. He's the best joker and just loves to have a great time. But he's so passionate about this. Give me the business. I love Dr. Damas, but he's so passionate about this industry and the power of this plant. And I couldn't think of a better person to have on today, and really being able for you to tell your story, but also talk about the potential of where do you see this going in the next 5, 10, 15 years, because it's not hokey dokey science. Like this is going to be more,
Yeah.
this is going to become mainstream. Don't you think, Dr. Damas? And we need to,
Yeah. I
those
do.
Yeah.
people that are, yeah.
The new study that just came out that cannabis cures COVID. I mean, every day it's something else that we are finding out and learning about this
Right.
plant. So there's so
Right.
much growth. Hmm.
Yeah, there is a lot of growth. There's a lot of money being poured into the space. Um, lots of money being poured into this. So once you have that much investment going in, you know that there's going to be tremendous growth. Unfortunately, that comes with some other things, right? With people looking to exploit or manipulate. But I
Of
do see a
course.
couple of things going on, right? We do so like for example, Epidiolex was a big mover and shaker. 2019, that was the drug, the seizure medication for these unique seizure syndromes like Dravet syndromes. Kids are having 200 seizures a day, right? And they can't be treated with other medications. In Epidiolex, CBD is the active ingredient. That is it. That is the only thing in there that is actually FDA approved to treat seizures, right? And so that's a big step because you can get a prescription of CBD, Epidiolex, right? But you can only get it for these particular things. But what that did was open the door to institutional medicine to some other things to research. And they did a lot of research, which allowed us to get some information in terms of like transit times from the mouth to the gut, plasma concentrations. And so like, what we've been doing thus far is kind of like an art, right? It's kind of like medicine man, medicine woman, kind of like, I'm going to try to figure out the dose based on like body weight and
Yeah.
how you feel and what I've heard, right? And so now this allows us to get a little bit more kind of like stable and understanding of that. So the amount of information that's available changes the game. And honestly, I think the people, like the connection, like you guys, right? There are so many passionate people and people being pulled in all the time who were in our situations or in my situation, which is like, I'm out of options here. Like, what can I do? And the more that
Right.
they hear these messages, I think, in my opinion, I will see CBD overtaking hemp and CBD overtaking cannabis or marijuana as a more accepted mainstream option, because I'll tell you the truth, right? Like, I like to get high too, but not all the time. Like, it's
Right.
just like but I do
Right.
like my anxiety away all the time. I do
Right.
like my anxiety away all the time. And I do
Right.
like to sleep. And sometimes I like to work before I sleep. So I don't want to, like, it's the end of the night and I want to go to sleep, but my only option is to get high to go to sleep, right? Sometimes I want to read and I want to do, relax and then go to sleep. And CBD gives me that option, and I
Yes.
can't see patients. I can't do things like this, and be coherent, right? So but again, I'm just speaking from my perspective. I'm just
Of
speaking from my
course.
perspective and my lane in it. The growth that I've seen and the willingness for people to accept CBD, I've got church people who are like, I ain't smoking no weed, but I'll do this CBD.
Right.
That's I like that, right? We got to
Right.
get you in the door somewhere. Let's go, maybe
Right.
it's not for you, right?
That's right.
So
You
Right.
got to
I
start
can see
somewhere,
that.
right?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, you got to start somewhere, and maybe that is your lane, right? Maybe that's where you start and you stay because of your beliefs or whatever it may be. I don't have no problems with that. Do you? How can I help you?
Right. How can
So
I help you
that's what
live
I see.
a healthier, well balanced life, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
cannabis, THC is not for everyone. Another one of my clients that I
yeah,
helped early on was prescribed with was diagnosed as schizophrenic, right? And people with
yeah.
schizophrenia or any other
You can,
mental
yeah,
THC can be very detrimental. And
it can be triggering.
so,
Yeah,
yeah, and so he was able to come off of his anxiety medication using CBD, a full spectrum CBD.
yeah.
So you have to know what might work for some people and what doesn't work for others.
Hmm.
And the research that is out there, it really does show and prove that this plant is medicine. And I'm
Yeah,
so grateful for you, Dr. Damas, for just being brave enough, bold enough to step out on faith, to step out on, to trust yourself, to bet on yourself, and be a voice with a medical degree that is talking about the truth about this plant. And so thank you so much. Thank you.
thank you.
How do people reach you? What is the best way for us to follow you and follow your journey, and check out some of your
Ah,
products?
real easy. So the website is just drdamas.com, DRDAMAS. We have a bunch of new products coming out that we've been working on for 2 years. Custom formulations. Like when I first started, like kind of like everybody else, we were white labeling. And then, again, just finding my lane, like I need a little bit more, like, I need some other options. And so working with this company and like, with chemists and organic chemists and all this stuff. So we've got like new products coming out from tinctures with both botanical, like we have tinctures with like bourbon flavoring and bitters in it and orange and like gives you that. It's
Love
really
it.
cool. And yeah, to lubes, suppositories, like
Love
yeah.
it.
Ross
Love
sat
it.
back in the chair. When I said Ross was like, "What'd you say?" What did
I
he
just want to
say?
add this. I just want to add this that Pfizer bought a cannabis company last month for $6.7 billion, and the three products
Yeah,
that cannabis company produces are suppositories. One of them are THC and derived, and the other two are CBD derived. So that's
yeah,
not a far fetched idea. We're going to be seeing pharmaceutical grade suppositories on the marketplace pretty soon.
yeah. And I'll tell you another
Yeah.
thing too. So drdamas.com, we have all these things coming out. We do a lot of content. Another interesting thing which I found out along is that most of my patients and customers are women, you guys. So even though I started with the football players, right? Like a lot of dudes' wives, ones that like, let's go, homeboy, you got to go see the doctor, right? And we do a lot of wellness things. So we incorporate. No, it's just drdamas.com, not full. Dr. Damas is
Okay.
my. When you spell it all out, that's my social media. So you can follow me on social media just at Dr. Damas, but spelled word doctor spelled out. But the website is abbreviated DRDAMAS. But it's mostly women, which is wild, right? I guess again, going back to like my mom, everything is full circle. So I hear certain things and I'm like, yeah, like I know what you're talking, I know what you're talking about. So we try to do one of the things that we do actually, which is I'm really, really like means a lot to me, is combining the CBD and the cannabis into people's wellness or lifestyle routines, right? So, what is it that you do? What other programs are you running, right, to get yourself feeling better? Is it the meditation? Is it the diet? Is it the physical activity, yoga, Pilates, fitness? What is it that you're doing, and what can we do in terms of cannabis, CBD or THC, to augment that and make that a better experience for you? Guys, I think a lot of people are looking for alternative, quote unquote, which I don't think they're alternative. Before Westerners came around, this was the standard. Like we had this information before and it's lost, and we're kind of trying to like find it now. But I do think more, even with the vaccines and everything, what people are not hearing, which I think as a physician, is upsetting to me, is it's one thing to say, oh, you guys are stupid, you don't know what you're talking about, right? But you're not listening, right? The problem is you're not listening. And what people are
Right.
saying is that I'm looking for something else. The
That's right.
message you're giving to me is not resonating with me. Give me something else. And instead of
Yes.
talking down at people and doing that stuff, right? You got to meet them where they are and say, okay, cool, I get it. What can I do for you, or how can I make this better? I think people are just like, I'm through with this like Western medicine. Having been somebody again on both sides as a patient before, when I
Right.
was like, oh, right. I know how it's messed up to like get involved and be like, I don't have a solution here. Like I'm still in bad shape.
Right.
So I know that. And then as a physician in training, I also know, how to differentiate between good stuff and bad stuff, right? So I know
Right.
there's certain things that like, yeah, that's good knowledge. And there's other stuff that's like, no, do not drink your own urine. It's a bad idea.
That's the bad idea.
That's a bad idea.
Well,
Do not drink.
I want to say to you, Dr. Damas, thank you so much. And I want to say to you, Sakpase. We really,
Nabule.
yay! We really, really
And so, hey,
appreciate
Nicole,
you.
so Nicole, before you get Dr. Damas off, I want to chime in because Dr. Damas, the all the ups and downs of what I went through with my TBI, what was born out of the traumatic, the healing that took place was born was my brand, Black Buddha Cannabis. And so I want to, I think there's ways of us working together. Black Buddha Cannabis is all about the combination of cannabis and being able to meditate and have these mantras that literally not disrespecting the religion of Buddhism, but really paying homage to some of the principles that are so important to that religion, like being able to self-manifest, to have meditation, to being able to practice your affirmations. And so that's what brought me back. I tell people that it brought me back to life. And I just want to make sure that we got someone in Oklahoma's like, bring this show to Oklahoma. So we may have to take this show on the road, Dr. Damas. Patient everyday doctor, everyday patient, got Nicole moderator, and this is something serious that people are dealing with. Yeah, we may have to just take this on the road because
I always tell
it's
people
serious.
say, how do you know Eric? They always say, how do you know Eric? How do you know Roz? And I'm like, well, we've been barnstorming the state, just like, going from town to town, going to these functions. Like, hey, what's up? Well, yeah, you know you're going to be here. Come on, man. What are you doing? Yeah.
Well, your
That's funny.
knowledge and
All
your
right.
wisdom and your experience is just it transmits to so many people. There's a lot of people that are dealing with this struggle, whether they're a medical professional or they're a patient. And it's important for our people in our community to hear these stories. It's important for us to come out of the cannabis closet and really start
Yeah.
talking about
Yeah, I
what
like that.
this plant actually does. Stop
Yes.
keeping it a
Yeah.
secret, because there's somebody sitting next to you in church that is addicted to these pain pills that
Yeah.
that you could save a life by just sharing your own personal story and your resources to have access to plant medicine.
Exactly. Love it.
Yes. So
All
thanks
right,
again,
ladies.
Dr. Damas.
Thank you.
Thank you so
It's so
much. We really
nice
appreciate
meeting you,
you.
Nicole. Roz,
Same.
it's great seeing you. Stay warm. I'm going to send you a space heater.
Thank you, everyone
Wow.
that has joined us on all our platforms today. You all have been amazing. Thank you, to my guest, Roz McCarthy, and to our guest, Dr. Damas. He was amazing as well. Please share this this video and this recording with your friends and family. You can catch it on our YouTube channel, M4MM United, as well as our Facebook page. I love you all. Have a blessed Saturday, and stay tuned to our platforms for Sow the Land, which is our hemp live webinar that is going to be coming up there next. Thank you all.